Ever feel like you don't quite fit in at work? You know, those traditional boxes.
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving into a world where those lines get really blurry third space roles in higher education.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area.
Yeah.
Especially in technology-enhanced learning. So we're thinking like academic developers,
Right.
learning designers, e-learning managers.
Yeah.
These folks are the bridge between professors and the ever-changing tech landscape in education.
Yeah. And our source today is super interesting. It's a collaborative story from 4 Australian professionals in the space sharing their own experiences. We're talking like pre-pandemic through the craziness of sudden online learning and beyond.
And what's striking is how crucial these roles became during COVID, almost overnight.
Yeah.
Universities were scrambling, and these were the people making blended learning happen.
Makes you wonder why these roles aren't better understood, even by the people in them.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to unpack today. What makes these jobs so unique, the tensions they face, and why you should care even if you've never stepped foot on a college campus.
Because honestly, this is about more than just academia. It's a glimpse into the future of work itself.
Okay, so let's dive into what these 4 professionals had to say. What really jumped out at you?
One of the first things that struck me was how these roles seem to attract people from all sorts of backgrounds. We're talking second or third careers. People blending skills you wouldn't normally see together.
Like what? Give me an example. I'm picturing some wild combinations here.
One of the authors went from teaching to media production to learning design.
Wow.
There's a real desire to mix things up, to use your skills in education in a way that feels impactful.
That's so cool. But I can also see how that squiggly career path, as they call it,
Right.
could cause some confusion.
Exactly. It's great for the individual, but it makes it hard to define the profession as a whole.
Right.
How do you create standards or career paths when everyone comes in with such different experiences?
And that lack of clear definition probably doesn't help when it comes to navigating the good old hierarchy of academia.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine trying to carve out your place when you're not quite faculty, but you're also not just support staff.
And the source material really highlights that, especially for learning designers.
Yeah.
They're the ones who often get stuck with the tech support label.
It's almost like their expertise gets reduced to just fixing broken software, when in reality, they're bringing so much more to the table.
Right.
Especially when it comes to pedagogy, how people learn best.
There's a story from Kashmira, one of the learning designers, that really drives this point home. She was basically told her input on course design didn't matter because of her job title.
It's a perfect example of how those ingrained hierarchies can completely undermine someone's expertise.
Right.
Just because your title says one thing doesn't mean you don't have valuable insights to offer.
It makes you wonder if physical location plays a role too, right? Like if you're tucked away in some IT department versus actually embedded with faculty. Does that change how you're perceived?
It definitely seems to Meredith. The e-learning manager talks about how being located within a specific faculty made a huge difference for her team. They were seen as trusted colleagues, not just the tech people down the hall.
So context is key.
Yeah.
You could have the exact same skills, but where you sit in the university structure could make or break your ability to be a true partner in teaching and learning.
It's a great point. And this idea of partnership is actually a major thread running through the whole narrative. It's not just about how individual learning designers are perceived, but also how these third space teams work together.
Because you've got learning designers, academic developers, librarians, all trying to support teaching with technology, but maybe not always on the same page.
Exactly. The authors talk about how these relationships can be messy. Sometimes it's fantastic.
Right.
Other times you're dealing with conflicting messages,
Yes.
duplicated work, and those dreaded silos.
But when these partnerships work well, it sounds like magic happens, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Imagine a learning designer, an academic developer, and a librarian, all brainstorming on a course redesign. The possibilities are endless.
That's the dream team right there. But it sounds like getting to that point takes real effort. How do you break down those institutional walls and create genuine collaboration?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And luckily, this deep dive gives us some clues as we go further into these professionals' experiences.
Okay, so we've got these third space teams navigating complex relationships, trying to break down silos. Sounds like a recipe for burnout.
It definitely can be.
Yeah.
And the researchers actually coined a term for a challenge these professionals face, the influence paradox.
Influence paradox. Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
It boils down to this. Often these professionals have a ton of autonomy in their day-to-day work. They're the ones on the ground making things happen.
But they don't necessarily have the official authority to match that responsibility.
Hit the nail on the head. They might be leading innovation, driving change, but they often lack the formal power to, say, set budgets, hire staff, or make big decisions that impact the whole institution.
So it's like they're expected to lead without the tools that usually come with leadership.
Exactly, which means they have to rely heavily on influence and relationship building, basically becoming masters of persuasion to get things done.
I'm picturing Alex, one of the learning designers, having to tailor his communication style for every meeting, talking tech with IT pedagogy, with faculty budgets, with admin. That's a lot of hats to wear.
Oh, absolutely. And that kind of constant code switching, that emotional labor can be exhausting.
Yeah.
Researchers found it's a major contributor to burnout in these roles.
Which makes me think managers need to be aware of this, right? Like, it's not enough to just say, go influence people.
Right.
You need to create an environment where that influence is valued and where people feel supported in that effort.
Couldn't agree more. Recognizing that emotional labor is huge. And it ties into another big issue. The researchers raise career crossroads.
Ah, yes. The age-old question of where do I go from here?
Right.
It's got to be tricky when your role is so undefined to begin with.
It really is. The researchers found a lot of learning designers in particular hit a glass ceiling.
Because they don't have a traditional academic pathway. Like, they're not necessarily on the tenure track.
Exactly. And even if they wanted to move into a more leadership-focused role, the options are often limited. It's like they're valued for their skills, but those skills aren't seen as transferable to higher-level positions.
So you've got this incredible talent pool. People who are natural collaborators, problem solvers, masters of influence, and the system is basically telling them, well, this is as far as you go.
It's a real loss not just for the individuals, but for the institutions themselves. And it can be especially tough for women in these roles.
Yeah.
Kate, one of the learning designers brought up the glass cliff phenomenon.
That's where women get promoted into leadership positions that are basically set up to fail, right? Like, they're given the toughest challenges with the least support.
Exactly. It's a worrying trend, and it points to a need for systemic change. We need to create clear pathways for advancement, recognize the leadership skills inherent in these roles, and address the gender dynamics at play.
This all makes me think about something Meredith said. She found so much support and inspiration in SOTEL research groups.
The Scholarship of Technology Enhanced Learning, fantastic communities where professionals and academics can connect, share research, and just generally geek out about their work.
Right. It's like finding your tribe, people who get it, who can offer advice, encouragement, maybe even open doors to new opportunities. And that seems especially crucial when the traditional career paths aren't there.
It's a great reminder that we don't have to navigate these challenges alone. Building those networks, those communities of practice could be a lifeline, both professionally and personally.
So we've talked a lot about the individual challenges, but I'm curious to zoom out a bit. How much does the institutional context itself shape these experiences?
It's a huge GE factor. The researchers found a constant tension between two models, service provision versus pedagogical partnership.
So is the TELL team seen as a support service just there to fix things and answer questions? Or are they seen as true collaborators, equal partners in teaching and learning?
That's the heart of it. And unfortunately, it seems like many institutions default to that service provider model. Meredith's team started out doing really innovative work, true collaboration, but over time it shifted towards just responding to requests, putting out fires.
And I bet that gets frustrating fast, especially for people who are passionate about pedagogy, about the how of learning.
Absolutely. Alex actually talked about feeling like learning designers were viewed as cosmetic. They're to make courses look pretty, not to fundamentally impact the learning experience.
Which kind of goes back to that whole issue of being underestimated and undervalued, right?
Right. It creates this vicious cycle where people are stuck in a service role, their expertise isn't fully utilized, and they're less likely to be considered for leadership positions.
So what's the way out? How do we break this cycle and create institutions that truly value ThirdSapce professionals?
Well, the researchers offer a really helpful framework for understanding the complexities at play. They call it the ThirdSapce Identity Framework.
Okay, ThirdSapce Identity Framework. I'm all ears. Tell me more about this.
Imagine a triangle. Each corner represents a key aspect of these roles. You've got career progression and development, professional relationships, and the overall organizational context.
And I'm guessing these corners aren't just sitting there static, right? They're all influencing each other?
Exactly. Yeah. It's a dynamic system. Your skills and experiences shape how you approach relationships, but those relationships are also influenced by where you sit within the institution, the structures you have to work within.
So someone who comes in with a strong teaching background might be really good at collaborating with faculty, but if the university culture is all about top-down decision-making, they might struggle to get their voice heard.
That's a perfect example. And on the flip side, someone who's really comfortable navigating bureaucracy might thrive in that environment, even if their pedagogical expertise isn't as strong.
It's like a puzzle, figuring out how these pieces fit together, both for the individual and for the institution as a whole.
It is. And the researcher's point is we can't just focus on one corner of the triangle. We need to look at the whole picture. How do we create career paths that value these diverse skills? How do we foster relationships that break down silos and encourage collaboration? And how do we shift institutional cultures to recognize and support the unique contributions of ThirdSapce professionals?
Because ultimately, it's about creating a system where these folks can not only survive, but thrive, right?
Exactly. When these professionals thrive, everyone benefits: students, faculty, the institution as a whole.
Well, I think we've just uncovered a whole new level of appreciation for what these ThirdSapce heroes are doing. They're juggling complex challenges, navigating undefined roles, and quite frankly, making higher education work in a world that's increasingly reliant on technology.
They really are.
Yeah.
And as technology continues to reshape every aspect of our lives, these roles are only going to become more important, not just in academia, but across all sectors.
Which brings us back to that question the researchers posed. How do we better support and empower these professionals? Because it's not just about giving them a pat on the back and saying, thanks for all the hard work. It's about systemic change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing their expertise, creating opportunities for advancement, and fostering a culture where their voices are heard and their contributions are valued.
And for our listeners out there, no matter what field you're in, if you're feeling like you're in that third space, remember that you're not alone. Connect with your people. Find your tribe. Build those networks that provide support and inspiration.
And don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, to challenge the status quo, and to push for the changes that will make your work more meaningful and impactful.
Beautifully said. So there you have it, a deep dive into the fascinating and often overlooked world of ThirdSapce professionals. We hope you've learned something new, gained some insights, and maybe even felt a little less alone in your own career journey.
Now remember, keep learning, keep connecting, and keep pushing those boundaries. The future of work depends on it.
Until next time, keep diving deep.